Hi guys, sorry to interrupt your viewing, but please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you.
Right as I leaned in to blow out my birthday candles, my 8-year-old daughter leaned close and whispered, "Dad says you're the reason he drinks." I smiled. I smiled so damn wide I think I cracked something in my jaw. And then I blew every single candle out, one by one, like I was erasing years. 10 flames, 10 lies, 10 years of pretending this man next to me hadn't slowly chipped away pieces of me like he was carving out a pumpkin, scooping me hollow with a smile on his face and a beer in his hand. The backyard was full of people I barely knew anymore. Derek had invited mostly his coworkers, and the few friends I'd managed to keep since college sat quietly in a corner, drinking wine and looking awkward, like they knew they didn't belong but felt too guilty to leave. Maddie ran off to play with the neighbor's dog, like she hadn't just detonated a truth bomb right in my lap. And Derek? He was half scrolling through his phone, half listening to some bro from the office explain the difference between scotch and whiskey, like either one of them didn't taste like regret and bad decisions. I sat there with the frosting still clinging to the knife in my hand, the pink plastic one we only use once a year. I stared at the cake for a full minute, and I remember thinking, what a joke. Happy birthday, Lisa. Here's another year of swallowing your words and pretending your husband doesn't treat you like a houseplant that waters itself. I poured myself a glass of wine, even though I'd promised myself I wouldn't. Just one. One glass to wash down the whisper. One glass to remind myself I still had a pulse. It wasn't what she said. I told my sister later that night over the phone, my voice shaking like a loose window in the wind. It was how she said it. Like she was repeating something she'd heard in a bedtime story. Like it was just another fact, like what time school starts or that the sky is blue. And the worst part? I knew. I knew Derek had started planting those little seeds in her brain, the way he used to plant doubt in mine. He didn't come right out and say I was a bad mother. He didn't scream. No, Derek was quieter than that. More surgical. He'd sigh just loud enough for Maddie to hear, mutter something like, "Mom's always tired," or "Mom's been a little emotional lately." Just enough to shape the narrative without ever saying the full sentence. That's how he worked. Like a sculptor chiseling a statue with whispers. When we first got together, I thought Derek was just one of those guys who carried a little pain around like a pocket knife, always there, just in case he needed to cut something loose. He was funny, sure. Loud in a charming way. He could walk into a room and make everyone laugh within 5 minutes, then have them pitying his rough childhood within 10. People fell in love with his stories before they ever got to know the man. Including me. God, especially me. He said he drank because of stress, because of work, because of bills, because of everything but himself. And then somewhere around year 5, he started drinking because of me. At least, that's what he told anyone who asked. He didn't say it outright, not at first. It started with eye rolls, then sarcasm. Then one night, after a fight about him missing Maddie's first school recital, he said it plain as day. "I wouldn't have to drink if you weren't always nagging." And I believed him. That's the part that still stings. I believed that maybe I was too much. Too emotional. Too needy. Too whatever the hell he needed me to be so he could sleep at night without choking on his own guilt. And Maddie? She was too little to understand it back then. But now? Now she was parroting his poison back to me like it was gospel. After the guests left and Maddie was asleep, I cleaned up the backyard in silence. Derek had disappeared to take a call, which probably meant drinking in the garage while texting one of his high school buddies who still thought women were the problem. I dumped the half-eaten cake in the trash, wiped the counter 3 times even though it was already clean, and finally sat down in the kitchen, staring at the wall like it owed me something. And then I remembered the backpack. Maddie had left it by the door, half-zipped with one of her stuffed animals sticking out. I don't know what made me look. Maybe instinct, maybe curiosity, maybe something darker. I reached in to pull out her homework folder, and that's when I felt it, leather. Cold. Heavy. Wrong. I pulled it out and held it in my hands like it was a dead animal. Derek's flask. The silver one I bought him years ago as a joke, back when I thought we were laughing with each other and not at ourselves. It smelled like bourbon and bad decisions. It smelled like shame. And suddenly, it all made sense. Why Maddie had whispered what she did. Why Derek had left early from the recital again. Why my whole birthday had felt like a funeral I hadn't been invited to. He was hiding it in her backpack. Either out of laziness or spite, I don't know. But one thing was crystal clear, he'd crossed a line. A big one. And I wasn't going to cover for him anymore. Not even once. Not even for Maddie. Not even for myself. I started counting. Not out loud, not even on paper, just little marks inside my head that slowly added up like the tick of a slow-burning fuse. 1. He told me I was lucky to have him. 2. He called my new dress brave in front of his coworkers, then laughed like I was supposed to take it as a compliment. 3. He had a beer in his hand again after swearing on Maddie's stuffed elephant, no less, that he was cutting back. 4. I found out he never stopped drinking. He just got better at hiding it. Every time Derek rolled his eyes when I talked, I logged it. Every sarcastic comment at dinner, every half-empty bottle shoved behind a towel in the laundry room, every passive-aggressive sigh when Maddie asked me a question instead of him. It all became part of the mental tally I kept just to remind myself I wasn't crazy. I'd spent the better part of a decade convincing myself that what was happening to me wasn't abuse because it didn't come with bruises or police reports. But emotional abuse is like black mold. You don't see it at first, not really, and by the time you smell it, it's already in your lungs. He didn't hit me. Not once. But he carved me hollow with words and looks and long silences that made me question if I even existed in the room. When I brought up something that bothered me, he'd shrug and say I was being sensitive. When I cried, he'd tell me to stop being dramatic. When I got angry, he'd flip it back, see, this is why I drink. You never know when to let things go. Letting things go. That was his favorite phrase, like it was a badge of honor to forget how bad he'd made me feel the night before. And God help me, I did let things go. I let go of self-respect. I let go of friendships. I let go of every small voice inside me that whispered something was wrong, because it was easier to stay quiet than start another fight I'd lose by default. He used to tell me I looked like a teacher from a retirement home. Once, I wore a green cardigan to a cookout with his friends, and he leaned in and said, "Jesus, Lisa, did you come straight from bingo night?" Everyone laughed. I did too, because what else was I supposed to do? Storm out? Make a scene? I wasn't that woman. I was the stable one. The strong one. The glue. At least, that's what people called me, like being the glue in a broken marriage was some kind of compliment instead of a slow death. In bed, it was worse. The guilt trips were quieter there, more subtle. He'd pout if I didn't feel like it. Turn away like a child denied candy. Then he'd say something like, "If you don't want me, someone else will," and I'd cave because it felt easier to give in than have him sulk for 3 days. He never forced me, but he pushed and poked and leaned on me until I cracked. That's not consent. That's pressure with a smile on its face. We've been married for 10 years, since 2018. Which means, that's almost 15 years of this crap. 15 years of telling myself it was just a phase, that the old Derek was still in there somewhere, buried under the weight of stress and job pressure and whatever excuse he'd cooked up that week. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: people don't hide who they are. They reveal it slowly, like a striptease with no music. You just have to be paying attention when the final layer comes off. I called Jess, my college roommate who went on to become a family lawyer. We hadn't spoken in over a year, not since I missed her baby shower. I told her I needed hypothetical advice, but she knew. She didn't ask questions. Just told me what to document, where to look, what to collect. Bank statements, texts, voicemails, anything that showed a pattern of behavior. She told me, "Lisa, this isn't just about you anymore. He's involving Maddie now. You need to stop thinking like a wife and start thinking like a mother who needs to protect her child." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. That sentence hit me harder than anything Derek ever said. Because she was right. This wasn't just about me being miserable. This was about Maddie growing up thinking this was normal. Thinking women just fold themselves into whatever shape their husband demands that day. I didn't want her first memory of love to be watching her mother disappear piece by piece. So I started collecting. I checked our joint account and found 4 charges to a liquor store he swore he hadn't gone to since Christmas. I installed a small camera in the kitchen, hidden in the fake potted plant near the fridge. I recorded him coming home late, slurring his words, talking to himself about how nothing's ever enough for Lisa. I saved every text that started with "Where the hell are you?" and ended with "This is why I need to drink." Then, one night, I picked up Maddie's tablet to set her morning alarm. She'd fallen asleep watching cartoons again, her head buried under the pillow like she was trying to disappear into it. I opened the gallery by accident. That's when I saw it, a video, shaky and poorly lit, but clear enough. Derek yelling. Not just yelling, screaming. Red-faced, spit-flying rage. The dog was cowering in the corner. Maddie was crying in the background, whispering "stop it" under her breath like she was reciting a prayer. My stomach dropped. I watched it twice just to be sure I wasn't imagining it. Then I saved it to my laptop, backed it up to a flash drive, and slid that flash drive into the bottom of my sock drawer. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there, counting. One more tally. One more nail. And he didn't even know the coffin was being built. The red binder didn't look like much at first glance, just a basic office supply from the clearance aisle at Staples, tucked behind bottles of bleach and half-used rolls of paper towels underneath the kitchen sink. I figured if Derek ever started snooping, it wouldn't be in the cabinet labeled cleaning supplies since, let's be honest, the man couldn't tell a sponge from a toilet brush even if you labeled them in neon tape. But that binder? That was my safety net. My insurance. My slow, methodical confession to the version of myself I'd been ignoring for far too long. It wasn't about revenge. Not really. Not in the way movies make you think, with screaming confrontations and broken plates and dramatic exits into the rain. No, this was about truth, and truth doesn't need fireworks. It just needs witnesses. Inside the binder was everything I couldn't say out loud. Printouts of text messages, screenshots of bank statements, photos of receipts from liquor stores Derek swore he hadn't stepped foot in for months. Each page was a piece of a puzzle I'd been trying not to finish. But now I was putting it all together, corner by corner, edge by edge, until the picture was too clear to ignore. I had started small, $100 here, $100 there, quiet transfers from our joint account into a bank account I opened in my maiden name. I kept the bank card hidden in an old book of Maddie's school pictures, the ones Derek never looked at unless someone asked him to. When I told my coworker Rachel that I needed help with a little home security project, she didn't ask many questions. She handed me a small, motion-activated camera the size of a lighter and showed me how to set it up using the app on my phone. We installed it together near Maddie's bedroom under the guise of just in case she gets scared at night. What I was really capturing was the sound of Derek stumbling down the hallway after midnight, the slurred words he thought were whispers, and the heavy thud of him leaning against the wall like gravity suddenly got too strong for him to handle. I recorded everything, every time he cursed under his breath because I asked him to rinse a dish. Every phone call where he told someone, "Lisa's been a little off lately." Every text that made my stomach twist. One in particular hit like a bullet. "Don't forget who makes the money in this house. You're just a glorified babysitter." I printed it out and slipped it into a clear sleeve in the binder. I don't know why that one made me cry more than the others. Maybe because it confirmed what I'd always suspected: he didn't see me as a partner or even a person. Just a warm body that cooked dinner and kept his daughter out of his way when he wanted to sulk with a bottle. I started taking photos, too. Pictures of the wine bottles hidden behind the dryer, The way the bathroom mirror always had splash marks near the bottom corner where he'd swig and rinse like it was part of his skincare routine. I even took pictures of the calendar where I marked the days he came home drunk versus the days he didn't. Spoiler alert, the drunk days won by a landslide. One night, I caught him screaming into a pillow. He thought I was asleep. He said my name 3 times, each one angrier than the last, like a curse he couldn't shake. I watched from the hallway, camera in hand, heart racing so hard I felt dizzy. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just hit record. There's a difference between fear and preparation. For a long time, I was scared of what would happen if I pushed back. If I told anyone. If I stopped playing the role of the understanding wife who gets that Derek's just under a lot of pressure. But now I wasn't scared. I was focused. I was done making excuses for a man who couldn't go 3 days without picking a fight or picking up a bottle. I was done explaining away the bruises on my self-worth. Hiring the process server wasn't even the hardest part. It felt like scheduling a dentist appointment. Practical, necessary, overdue. I picked someone local, someone with good reviews. I gave her the file. I gave her the date. I gave her the location. And here's the thing, I didn't want it done at work or at home. That would have been too private. I wanted eyes on it. I wanted it done where Derek wouldn't be able to spin the story, where there'd be no shadows to hide behind. So I picked the one place I knew he still pretended to care. Maddie's school. I know what you're thinking. That's brutal. That's low. That's dragging a child into something that should stay between 2 adults. But let me tell you something, when you've watched a man poison your daughter's idea of love, when you've heard your child cry herself to sleep because daddy told her mommy's too sensitive, when you've covered for him so many times you start forgetting what your own voice sounds like. You stop caring about appearances. You stop caring about what's appropriate. You start caring about what's effective. I wanted him to feel what I'd been feeling for years, exposed, off balance, and stripped of the story he'd been telling everyone around him. He still didn't know it was coming. But I'd already chosen the exact day, the exact time. Pickup line. 3:15. Tuesday. I closed the binder, locked the cabinet, and waited. I pulled into the pickup line like I always did, quiet, calm, vanilla on the outside, but brewing like a damn storm underneath. I had my sunglasses on even though it was cloudy, one hand on the wheel and the other gripping my coffee like it was an anchor. I wasn't shaking. Not anymore. That stopped sometime around midnight the night before, when I finally gave up trying to convince myself that maybe this was too much, too harsh, too public. But then I remembered how many nights I'd sat on the edge of the tub, staring at the wall while Derek screamed at me from behind a locked door because I dared to turn down dinner plans or disagreed with him about something stupid like the thermostat. I remembered Maddie crying into her stuffed bear because she thought it was her fault daddy drank so much. I remembered every single moment he made me feel like a ghost in my own home. And so no, I didn't flinch. Not anymore. Derek, of course, was late. He always was when it came to anything that involved effort or patience. He pulled in behind me, way too fast for a school zone, wearing that same ratty jacket he swore was his lucky one but smelled like whiskey and arrogance. He had a Starbucks cup in one hand and a Bluetooth in his ear, like he was still living in 2010 when people actually used those things and thought they looked important doing it. He was laughing too loud, talking to someone on the other end of the call about some big client who was ready to sign. Bullshit. Derek hadn't had a real client in months, just a rotating carousel of half deals and almosts he used as a smokescreen to justify why he spent more time drinking than working. I watched him in my rearview mirror as he got out of the car, sunglasses on, strutting like he owned the damn sidewalk. I knew what was coming and I almost felt bad for him. Almost. But then I remembered what was in the envelope that was about to be handed to him: full custody paperwork, a formal demand for an alcohol abuse evaluation, and a restraining order request based on verbal and emotional abuse. Everything he said and did was finally about to land on his front porch in triplicate. That's when she appeared. The woman I hired was smart. Jeans, ball cap, oversized hoodie. She looked like any other mom waiting for a kid to come out of the building. No clipboard. No briefcase. No neon sign that said, "You're screwed." Just a folder tucked under one arm and a calm expression like she'd been here 1,000 times before. She walked up to him right there in the middle of the sidewalk, between the bench and the bike rack, and asked, "Are you Derek Mullins?" He looked up, still on the phone, not even processing it yet. "Yeah. Who the hell? You've been served." And just like that, it was done. The folder hit his chest like a slap, and the expression on his face shifted so fast I almost thought it was a magic trick, smug to stunned in under 2 seconds. Parents were watching. Teachers were watching. And most importantly, Maddie was watching from the top of the school steps, her little pink backpack hanging off one shoulder, mouth slightly open like she'd just seen a grown-up version of a monster movie. I didn't move. I didn't honk. I didn't wave. I just waited, eyes on the road ahead like this was just another Tuesday, just another drive. Derek opened the folder right there in the parking lot, flipping through the pages like he could undo them with speed alone. He tried to say something, to yell across the lot, but his voice cracked and faltered. Whatever he was going to scream died in his throat when a group of moms turned and stared. His audience was real now, and Derek never performed well when he didn't have control of the script. And for the first time in a long time, I realized something deep in my bones. He wasn't going to charm his way out of this. He wasn't going to manipulate it. He wasn't going to lie fast enough. This time, he'd have to face it all. No shortcuts. No scapegoats. I saw Maddie walking toward my car, her steps slow, her brow furrowed. She looked back at her dad once, confusion on her face, worry in her eyes. When she reached the door, she opened it and slid into the back seat without a word. I looked at her in the rearview mirror and asked, "You okay, baby?" She nodded but didn't speak. As we pulled out of the lot, she finally whispered, "Is Daddy going away?" I didn't answer right away. I just drove. Because what was I supposed to say? Was he going away? Was he going to change? Was he going to finally take responsibility? I didn't know, and I wasn't going to lie to her just to make the car ride easier. So I did what I should have done years ago. I kept my mouth shut and reached back for her hand. I just held her. Tight. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared of what came next. And neither was she. 2 weeks passed in a kind of slow, strange quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful or clean, but more like the heavy, still air that lingers after something big and loud has fallen apart. Derek wasn't living at the house anymore, and the first morning I woke up without hearing him stomping around in the hallway or slamming a cabinet out of habit, I didn't know how to feel. I just sat on the edge of the bed staring at the closet he never fully unpacked, thinking about how many years I'd spent tiptoeing through my own life, trying not to upset a man who could barely stand the sound of his own conscience. He was crashing with some guy he used to work with, a friend from his short-lived stint in construction sales, one of those types who always referred to his divorce as the best decision his ex ever made, while still calling her a witch any time her name came up. Derek was exactly where he belonged, in a space full of stale beer and cheap couches and men who still thought being loud made them powerful. I didn't check in with him, and he didn't call. Instead, I found out how he was doing the same way everyone else did, through vague, passive-aggressive Facebook posts that dripped with just enough bitterness to make people guess at what had gone wrong, but not enough to give them the whole truth. "Crazy how some people forget who had their back," he wrote one night, accompanied by a stock image of a wolf walking alone through the snow, like he was some misunderstood lone alpha instead of a grown man who couldn't control his temper or his alcohol intake. Another post 2 days later simply said, "Be careful who you trust. Snakes always smile first," which made me laugh out loud while I was doing dishes. He'd always had a flair for dramatics, but now that nobody was cleaning up after him, it was showing like cracks in cheap porcelain. Some of his friends unfriended me without a word, which was expected. Others reached out privately to say they never liked him anyway, that they always sensed something was off, that they admired how I handled everything. It was flattering in a hollow kind of way, like someone complimenting you for surviving a storm after your house was flattened. Thanks, but I still have to figure out how to rebuild. I didn't respond to most of them. I didn't need a fan club. I needed space. Maddie, meanwhile, was quiet in a way I hadn't seen before. Not sad exactly, not shut down, but quieter. Thoughtful. Watchful. Like she was studying the air around her to figure out if it was finally safe to breathe. I signed us both up for therapy. She got the bright, friendly child counselor with a candy jar on the desk. I got the woman with the tired eyes and the tissue box already halfway empty. I didn't go in there to bash Derek. That wasn't the point. But I didn't lie either. I told the truth like I was reading it out loud for the first time. Slowly, carefully, letting it sting. I didn't ruin him, I said, looking at the ceiling so I wouldn't have to see the pity in her face. He showed up ruined. I just stopped handing him glue. And for once, someone nodded without asking if I'd tried harder. Without suggesting I look at things from his side. Without telling me that maybe he was just overwhelmed or struggling or trying his best. I was so tired of giving men the benefit of the doubt when all they'd given me was disappointment and double standards. My therapist said something that stuck with me. You're not angry because he failed you. You're angry because you kept hoping he wouldn't. That hope was gone now, and with it came something better, clarity. Not peace exactly, but clarity. I knew what I wanted. I wanted stability. I wanted space to breathe without walking on eggshells. I wanted Maddie to grow up knowing that her mother didn't settle for someone who broke things and called it love. It was a Wednesday morning when the letter came. I was packing Maddie's lunch, sliding a juice box into her lunchbox, and trying to remember if she still hated apple slices this week or if we were back on good terms with them again. The doorbell rang, sharp and sudden, and when I opened the door, there was no one there. Just a thick envelope, tucked between the mat and the frame, heavy in that way only legal documents manage to be. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it, still holding a peanut butter knife in one hand, and I smiled. Not the polite, empty smile I used to wear like armor, but a real one. The kind that comes from knowing you've already survived the worst part, and everything after this is just cleanup. I picked it up, set it on the counter, and finished the lunch like it was just another normal morning. Because it was. Because from here on out, normal belonged to me. If he thinks I'm still the reason he drinks, I said out loud, not caring that nobody was around to hear it, then he should probably stop. Because the only person making him thirsty now is karma. Later that night, as I tucked Maddie in and pulled the blanket over her tiny shoulders, she looked up at me with those wide, searching eyes of hers and asked, "Are you still mad at Daddy?" I paused. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I wanted to say it right. I brushed her hair back from her forehead and kissed her cheek, then sat there for a moment, just holding her hand. "No, baby," I finally said. "I'm just done giving him chances to disappoint me." And I meant every word of it,